how would you describe the Toronto sound?
I think that Toronto has a few sounds because of the fact that Toronto is so multicultural. They overlap. But like, if we're just to say the Toronto sound that's like the prominent thing that has definitely come from here and nobody can claim that it came from anywhere else, it is the muted bass, slow melodic rap that Drake and 40 created that became something that not only other Toronto artists started to do, but like artists around the world.
Hey, boys in the borough, boys, always in the motherfucking borough. No, we keep it thorough. See me on the streets, don't be asking for referrals. Hey, there's no running back. We on the road, that's a fact. Came so far, there's no going back. See me in the club, keep it six, we got my rap.
My guy, thank you for coming to the crib.
Brother, thank you for inviting me.
Bro,
It is beautiful
We
here.
gotta do that again. That felt weird.
Oh, let's do a real one, a big one. Ah!
My guy, it's so good having you in the crib. I feel like we've sat down and we've talked a couple times.
We have.
And every time we talk, I learn something new about you. I learn something new about your field. And I'm happy to say you have something that you're promoting now, right? You have one of these happening now.
I always have something I'm promoting, but right now, wait, first of all, do I sound funny? I got these brand new grills in right now.
Oh, they look fire.
Wu-Tang Fangs. And I feel like I sound funny. Do I?
No, you sound. If you
Good.
want, take them out.
I'll take them out halfway if I feel like it. Yes, I, just like you, started a new podcast.
Amazing.
And I'm just like you. I'm shooting it in my house.
Bro, this is the way to do it. It's cost efficient. You're also doing it with people that you like. So you're inviting them into your space. It's like the way that I want this to be, and it already is like you're hanging out with somebody, we're talking, and you're somebody I would hang out with anyways.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, my philosophy behind it, I was looking for a space.
Right.
And I was looking at all these different podcast studios.
Right.
Then I was like, but I don't want my set to look like everybody else's set.
Fair enough.
So then I was looking for, because I lived in a smaller condo before. Yeah. So I was looking for, it's obviously not conducive to do it in the condo. So I was looking for like maybe a workspace, like a, you know, some kind of studio that it could be mine, so that I could decorate it the way I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And that shit is not cheap downtown. I was mistaken. I thought it was going to be something decent. Mm-hmm. It was super not decent. So then I figured I'd just like move into a space where it like can do that. Yeah. Because I really feel like having people come into your space, like a comfortable space, is a different vibe than like a studio. Like
100%.
the last interview we did, well, not the panel, but the interview we did for the magazine,
right.
It was like, it was in a studio with a bunch of people, and it's like very pro, top level, everything. Right. But it felt colder than this.
And I agree with you. The thing is, when you're doing something, you know, so that interview you're referring to, it was a great interview. I had fun with you, but you're right, too. It was in a studio, it was for Complex. Yeah. And we sat there, and it doesn't feel as intimate. It feels like you're working.
Very official.
It's very official. You got cameras everywhere, lights. You're in a studio, like you said, there's, you know, a group of people behind the cameras that the audience doesn't see. So this is just casual, bro, and I like it. The other thing, so you know George Stroumboulopoulos, guy, somebody I admire. I worked with him for many, many years. He did House of Strombo out of his crib. Yeah. For the longest time, I directed and produced that.
Oh shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah, man.
Dope.
So a lot of this is inspired by him. These panels actually are from George Stroumboulopoulos Tonight.
No way.
When he was on CBC. So these at one point lived in the CBC. As part of his set.
Very cool.
And then when we wrapped up the whole thing, the production manager was like, hey man, do you want to take a couple of these? I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah. So now they're part of my home and part of my set.
I love it.
You know?
I love it.
So it's very much inspired by House of Strombo and George Stroumboulopoulos.
I loved House of Strombo, especially, you know, performances and all that. It just felt like a house party.
Absolutely, bro.
At his house. And similar in this way, it's like, I'm over at the crib. I'm aware that there are cameras and lights and I'm laved up. Yeah. But it also just feels like we're chilling.
Of course. And that's the way it should feel, man.
So that's why I'm doing mine that way too. It's called Live Actually. Yeah. And the premise of it, I'm speaking to mostly music people. Okay. Musicians and people in and around the music business. But not just limited to that, just creative people in general. Yeah. And speaking of what it is to make a life in this business. What is the work-life balance? What makes you happy? What does success mean to you? How you navigating things as they continue to change? Right. And like what really matters? And I feel like these are conversation points that we don't always get to have with creative people. It's always specifically, okay, what are you promoting? What's happening next? Where are you going on tour? All that stuff, which is super important. We got to talk about that. Yeah. We have to. We're excited to talk about that stuff. But I'm also really excited to talk about people's lives and like, who are you as a person, and like, what does this all mean? Why do you even do it? What's your why?
Of course. And I think that's the beauty of having a conversation versus having an interview.
Correct.
An interview is just really, it feels formal and it's press and it's media. Having a conversation is just a conversation.
Yeah.
Man.
So let's have a conversation.
Let's do it, bro. So here, jumping into that. Well, who's your first guest? Like, who did you decide to have on?
Yeah. Well, the first episode was just me talking about what it is.
What it is.
And it's like just the tip of the iceberg. So I'm gonna have several episodes where it's literally just me talking and like speaking on what it is or what I care about, or the direction of the pod, or just whatever I feel like talking about. It's my show. I can talk about what I want. But as far as guests, the first guest that I had on, which is up now, is a young artist out of Montreal named Chico Russ.
Dope.
Very dope young man. 20 years old. Sings R&B, but like with a bit of a 2000s flavor to it.
Our R&B era.
Right?
Yeah.
He's from Montreal, like I said, but he's signed to 300 in the States, 300 Entertainment. So he has like the proper indie label, major label adjacent type push. But I was just really, really fascinated by his choice of music considering his age. And then getting to chop it up with him, it was like, the kid has such a head on his shoulders. For a young guy coming into this business, it's so often that young people getting into the biz don't understand the biz, don't understand what they want. They just are taking things as they come.
Right.
And Chico is not that guy. He really understands what he wants. He knows he wants to build legacy. He's taking his time and being very meticulous with his choices and having a whole lot of fun all the way through.
I think a big part of why I do this for a living and why I even talk to people is because I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've always been like that. You've been a curious person.
Very
and
much
you
so.
surround yourself with a lot of people that are creatives that you could learn from as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is something that you would say from your first episode that you've had a guest on that you learned from him? What was your first learning from him?
The thing that I learned from him is all is not lost. We have a bright future ahead of us. There are a lot of really young artists, and the next artist that I have on that's going to be on the next week's episode, you'll see, is an artist named Oliver Cronin.
Okay.
Another young artist. He's from Australia. He was on a promo tour, so I happened to catch up with him and have him come by the crib. It's like, there are young artists out there that really understand what it is that they want out of life, what they want out of their careers, and I feel like it kind of feels sometimes like, oh man, it's ageism too. Older people are like, oh man, these kids don't know shit. And then the kids are like, oh man, these old heads don't know shit. It's like, I'm not that.
Right.
And it's great to meet younger folks that are also not that. Like, they're looking for the wisdom and guidance from the older people that have been in the business for longer and more experience. And I'm always interested in speaking to the new generations as they come and see what's important to them, what they care about, and also to help guide wherever I can. Like Chico Russ in particular, in our conversation, destiny and like following your heart and following your gut was the kind of thing that came up a lot, even off camera. And I had a copy of my favorite book, The Alchemist, sitting there. And
great book, by the way.
Great book. Yeah. So I gave it to him. I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'll get another one. I want you to read this because I feel like it's going to really speak to you. And he was like, yo, can you sign it for me? Super dope kid, man. Super dope. He's a great. He's fam now.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
When you think about, even starting a podcast, I went through this exact same process where I'm like, this is mad saturated. I feel like everyone and their mom has a podcast now.
Yeah.
How did you come to terms with saying to yourself, well, I'm going to create a podcast and this is going to be my approach?
I feel like a lot of things in this world make us feel like that. Like, oh man, so many people are doing it. How do I carve out a space for myself?
Right.
It's just like I'm yelling into the abyss. Nobody's going to hear me.
Right.
But I've just always been such a firm believer in we're all such individuals. I know who I am and I know there's no other me.
Yeah.
So whatever I do is going to be unique simply for the fact that I'm the one doing it. And I also had a switch. I would say in the last maybe 2-3 years, that I used to do promo with the intent of bringing everybody to the party. Everybody, come here. Everybody be a part of this. Everybody come on board. And I changed that to like, no, I'm going to be myself. I'm going to continue to be myself authentically all the way, which I always have. But it's less salesy if I'm just showing you what it is that I do, what I care about, what I love. And if you rock with it, you're welcome. If you don't, that's also okay. I only want the real ones. I want the people here that like really want to be here.
That's a great approach, man.
You know what I mean? And for that reason, it's allowed me to not worry about numbers. It's allowed me to not worry about what people are going to think. Like, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about what people think in general, but we all get caught up in this social media thing, and you post something and it feels like it's crickets, so nobody heard it or whatever. It's like, I learned that, you know what? As long as the right people tap in, I'm building a community that will grow. And as long as I stay consistent, that's my part. I just got to stay consistent and continue to feed that good shit. Yeah. And if I put out enough good shit, and I think what I do is really good, there are other people that are going to like it too.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I'm targeting.
I definitely, you touched on something great. And actually, the last time we spoke was for a mental health panel.
Yeah.
Right. Shout out Saint. But I want to get back to that for a sec, because I want to visit social media and the way that makes people feel in today's society. But just going back to the podcast, there's a conversation that always gets thrown out, whether it's music or any kind of artistry or creative platform, where people always say, nowadays, you got to find your niche. What's your niche? What's your niche, right? We do say niche or niche? What do you say?
I say niche.
I say niche too. But when people say you got to find your niche, how valid is that for you? And is that something that's true?
I understand it. And I do wrestle with it at times because there is truth to the fact that the way the algorithms work, they push what people say they like.
Right.
So like if you do basketball content and people that like basketball keep tapping, it's going to send them more of what you do because it's specifically basketball stuff. And if that person double taps a lot of basketball stuff, they're going to clue in and be like, okay, cool, yeah, that's the person that likes basketball stuff. Shovel on that to them. However, I'm not monolithic. I like too many things genuinely. I enjoy too many things genuinely. And for those reasons, I can't be consistent and be happy making things if it's all the same thing. So I understand for myself that consistency is more important than niche. I gotta enjoy what it is that I'm doing or I'm not gonna do it. I know myself, right? And I think that in general, if you're consistent, if you keep showing up for yourself every day, even if you're doing different things, you're still you at the center of it. So I consider myself my niche. And I have music as far as the music I make. I have DJing. I have basketball because of my work with the Raptors. I have the podcast now. I have, you know what I mean? I'm doing this partnership with the Hilton Hotel now. That's a whole thing by itself. I do a lot of things. I have a marketing company that, I work with artists and do marketing and branding for them. I do all these things. And I feel like the central hub is me. So I'm like my website. And all the social platforms and all these things are all the appendages that all lead to the central hub, which is me. So I don't think that I will ever put on blinders and just do one thing. Of course, we focus on certain things at certain times. I'm just getting this podcast off the ground, so I'm heavily focused on the podcast. But that doesn't stop me from making music. That doesn't stop me from DJing. That doesn't stop me from talking about all the things that I care about. And I think that that's the most important thing as far as being a whole human. And when I get feedback from people as well, regarding my socials specifically, the feedback is often, yo man, you just always just come off like you're just really being yourself. That's because I am. Who you meet is who you see.
Authenticity goes a long way,
you know what I mean?
Man. Yeah.
And part of my authenticity is the fact that I like a lot of things and I like to have my hands in a lot of jars. And this is what excites me about life. And my goal ultimately is to live a dope ass life.
Yeah, I feel you. I think this concept with catering to a niche is good, and it's smart in the sense of you know, if you hit that niche long enough, you'll get known for it, right?
Right.
But in the sense of what you're saying, like the other day, man, I made a video, and I don't make a lot of food content, but I made this one burger, best burgers in Toronto.
Okay.
And that went viral. I'm like, I'm not a food
Right?
creator.
And you're like, I don't want to be the burger guy.
I don't want to be the burger guy. I don't necessarily want to be. I like food, but I'm not necessarily the food guy.
Right.
But other people were like, "Oh, you found a niche. Like you should." And I'm like, "That's not really me." I made that one video. I like it, and it was fun. I'm glad I did it. Will I do more food videos? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tie myself to having to live in that niche.
I agree.
Right.
Wholeheartedly. I would suggest definitely pay attention to what people have given you feedback on. Like, clearly somebody liked it.
Oh, for sure.
Because it went crazy. So I got cool. Add that feather to your cap. Now I can do some food stuff. When I feel like doing some food stuff, I'll do some food stuff because I see that my audience is here for it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What's been your highest performing piece of content of all time that you've ever created? Because you do tons of music stuff. Like,
yeah, I have. It kind of depends on the platform. On TikTok, it's definitely always to do with me playing African music at Raptors games.
Yeah,
African music,
which is
or
great
Caribbean
content.
music.
You know what I think it is too. Just as a fan of your content, I think anytime that people see your content while you're DJing at a game, it's just such a spectacle. Visually, it's like this guy's at the top of this throne, you know, playing music for this, you know, and the Raptors organization.
Literally 20,000 people here, all that,
it's
TV,
incredible.
Everything.
I think that goes a long way.
No, for sure, absolutely, and I recognize that. But I've done a bunch of videos in the arena prior.
Right.
Nothing really took off like when I started being like, yo, let me start putting music in this room that doesn't normally see rooms like this. Right. And that's like African music, that is Latin music, that is Caribbean music, that is, you know, Indian music, South Asian, like all these different things that I do. And then also Canadian music specifically. When I do those things, I see people really, really getting involved in the comments and the views go up and all that. And I think that it's valid because it's like, well, I'm platforming music and artists that don't necessarily live in those spaces, and that's my intention too. So it's dope that people actually like it. Right.
That's amazing, man. I think when I think of you as a DJ too, you're always kind of doing something that other DJs are not doing, and I've known that about you from a long time. Even if you think about your relationship with the Raptors, I don't think you were the first, but you were one of the first NBA DJs.
To my knowledge, I'm the second.
Who was the first?
DJ Irie in Miami.
In Miami, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about that, it's like you jumped on that wave before. Now every team has a DJ.
Yeah.
But you jumped on that wave before, and you were one of the first DJs that I've seen that was moving really heavy on TikTok. How do you stay ahead of the curve? Like, how do you stay ahead?
Number one, I pay attention. Like you said, I'm inquisitive. I always like to learn. I want to see what's going on. Like, what can I do? What's exciting? What are other people not doing that maybe could be something that could be part of what helps me cut through the noise of the fact that there's so many people doing these things.
Right.
But the other thing really is I've just always been a believer in taking advantage of opportunities. Like, no opportunity is too small. If you see value in something, and you got to see past that individual thing and think of like, where can this go? Right. What can I build from this? What can this evolve into? So like, for example, without telling the story again, because I tell the story a lot, how I ended up being the Raptors DJ started.
I myself have heard this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But
of course.
Just long story short, how I ended up being the Raptors DJ started with me DJing in a retail store in the mall.
Of course, yeah.
And just a series of events and a series of choices that I made.
Yeah.
And opportunities that I seized turned into that thing. Now, when I started it, that wasn't even a thing that existed yet.
Yeah.
I was unaware of DJ Irie, and I didn't know that could be a thing. I'm not even sure he was with the Heat yet at that time when I started at Roots Canada.
Right.
But I just saw it as an opportunity. And then from that, other opportunities begat other opportunities, and I just kept being like, yes to that one, no to that one, and found my way.
I didn't ask you that question because I know you get asked all the time. Like, how many times do you think you've been asked that question?
I honestly could not tell you. It's like the questions that I get asked are, do you know Drake?
Right, of course.
How did you become the Raptors DJ? And can you play my song at the Raptors game?
Of course. Like
Those are the
clockwork.
top 3 questions of my entire life.
Okay, well, look, you brought up Drake.
Yeah.
We got to talk about it.
Okay, we can talk about it a bit.
I just want to get your take on the whole thing. So, you know, obviously we're talking about the Kendrick and Drake beef.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about this in episode 1 with 6 at 6.
Yeah.
He had, me and him, we at the time when we were both talking about it, it was still fairly fresh. And being Toronto fans and obviously, trying to support Drake and wanting Drake to win and wanting the city to win, I looked at it in the moment too, where it was fresh and I was like, I think Drake won. And Brandon said the same thing. And then now as I'm looking back at it, I'm like, I still think he won. But the way, it's funny how culture is shaped by public opinion as well. Right? Because then before, me and Brandon had that conversation, it was just a matter of opinion. And then after that, Kendrick's song went number 1 on Billboard and all these things started happening. So it's like, that starts to shape people's opinions and also what a public win looks like, I think. So I like, if I'm looking at myself, I still think Drake won, right?
Yeah.
But public opinion, I can't now say that somebody's wrong if they say Kendrick won, because I'm like, I see how the masses would look at this, right? What do you think?
Well, I think in the court of public opinion, it's definitely not a clear win for either.
Right.
I think that different people have different opinions on how it went. There was no real knockout punch to say, okay, definitively that person won.
I feel like if you talk to Americans, they definitively think that Kendrick won.
Right, but that comes with bias.
Of course.
You know what I mean? I can say very clearly, I am biased.
Yeah.
I'm Canadian, I'm from Toronto, and yes, I know Drake. So like, yeah, I'm on my guy's side. However, taking that out of it, objectively looking at it, I was doing my best during the whole thing to just be like, you know what, let me be as impartial as possible, understanding my bias. And just like song for song and how it turned out. Well, number one, it kind of turned out sad, which is what I didn't like, is like the subject matter of the songs left, I'm the better rapper and you suck, and it turned into what I saw somebody describe as research and destroy, which I didn't like that. You know what I mean? Like nobody wins when it just ends up being 2 very prominent black men tearing each other down personally in front of the public. I didn't like that, how that turned out. But outside of that, Drake had the last song. Generally in battles, whoever speaks last is the winner because the other person hasn't responded. That's one thing. But number 2, I think that a lot of people got excited about Kendrick dropping music frequently because he doesn't.
Yeah.
And because he was rapid fire between Friday and Saturday of that week. And then the last one was a bop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a bop. It's a Mustard beat. It's hard. I don't even know if Mustard knew it was happening till it happened. Right. But I listened to that song and I'm like, I wish this was about something else. I wish this was just a Kendrick song that he just put out in general and used that beat versus it being a song about this subject matter. Because I don't, you know what I mean? It taints it for me because that's the part of the battle where they're already getting really personal and digging into each other's like personal lives and making claims that each other is like a horrible person.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like I can't dance to a PDF file song. You know what I mean? Like that's not a vibe. That's not a bop to me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, just more maybe on a Toronto politics tip. Let's say let's say you like the song. Yeah. I know you're saying I like the beat, I like how it came, but
I like the beat and I like the hook. I don't like the subject matter.
So let me ask you this: even just the hook, would you ever run that at a Raptors game?
Well, no. If it was just a regular Kendrick song and this battle never happened, sure, absolutely.
Right.
But because of this, like, no, absolutely not. Number one, again, I'm Toronto through and through. I know I'm wearing a Yankees hat right now. I know this. It's just the fashion. It just matches my fit. I'm a Toronto guy.
Right.
And Drake is my guy. I'm on this side of things. And also, 2 other aspects of the battle that I did not really take kindly to. Number one, using the fact that Drake is Canadian as some sort of derogatory term. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. There's mad Canadian superstars in music and beyond. But they just brought back this whole America's the best kind of,
I agree.
you know what I mean? This kind of narrative that I'm like, you guys rock with us. Like, don't act like you don't just because we're trying to draw a line in the sand. I mean, that's not the line. If you don't like Drake, say you don't like Drake. But to say, oh, he's Canadian as some sort of derogatory term, it's like, you love it here too. You know what I mean? Right. Every single one of those people that's ever been here, they know they love it here. They all know they love Drake's music if they don't like him as a person. They all know they love Jesse Reyes. They all know they love The Weeknd, who's also in that same battle. Yeah. But nobody's saying anything about him being Canadian. You know what I mean? All of that. I didn't like that.
Because he sided with the Americans. He sided
with the Americans. The second part, and this is the part that really digs me, is Kendrick is supposed to be a man of the people and a very pro-black representative. He's about lifting us up, not tearing us down. And he started treading the line of colorism. And that's not in alignment with who he presents himself as.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we're not supposed to be separating ourselves. And he is an advocate for, no, we are together. We, you know, they want to hold us down. We're not going to let them. We have unity within us. And then he's like, on this colorism because Drake is mixed race. And I'm like, my brother in Christ, I know that you know that if Drake wasn't Drake and he was driving in California and got stopped by the police, they see a black man. He knows that. He absolutely knows that. We all know that. So to try to say Drake is not black enough or imply it or in any way is divisive. Yeah. And that's not what Kendrick is about, or that's not what he says and has lived and has told us he's about for a decade. So for that to be an angle that he took, that kind of took points off the board for me on Kendrick as an artist. Like, I like Kendrick. I went to Kendrick's concert a couple years ago here. I'm a fan.
Right.
But like, that kind of chipped away a little bit at his integrity for me. Battle aside, if he did that in any circumstance, I'd be like, Kendrick, for real, you? Like, I expect that from maybe Rick Ross, but not you. You know what I mean? Rick Ross doesn't stand up for us like that. You do.
Right. It's interesting because I agree. I think you're right in the sense too where the battle overall just started to go in ways where it's like, do you actually feel this way?
Right, or is it just for the sake of the battle?
Or are you just trying to find a way to one up?
Yeah,
right, you know?
I didn't like that. I felt like that diminished his character.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed.
That being said, I think if you ask most people in Toronto, you know, will want to side with Drake because, you know, he's representing the city, he's representing Canada. Sure. But there's been very interesting discussions that have come out after the battle, and this is actually something I really want to get your opinion on. The battle is the battle. It's cool. Right. It was entertaining. Came and went, and it's cool. Good. We got good music out of it.
We
cool.
did.
So that's great. But what actually I find was a more interesting discussion is having artists in the city and also people like Ebro. I posted this clip on the One Boro Instagram site, but Ebro went on his Apple show and he had a really interesting outlook on the battle, and he was also saying, you know, this is a point where if you look at Toronto, can Toronto artists stand on their own without Drake? That's the first thing he was asking, and then he's like, and then on top of that, he's like, I don't think that Toronto has a regional sound. Like, they don't have a sound that they can stand on. And he's like, when it became a regional thing, he's like, that's why Kendrick won. Is basically because he got together with Mustard. They did the whole West Coast thing, and it was a banger, and that went over the top. He's like, once it became a regional thing, what was Drake gonna do? Like, what sound does Toronto have? And this is where a lot of people started batting up, you know, Ebro, and they were like, what are you talking about? Of course Toronto has a sound.
That is absolutely ridiculous of Ebro. And Ebro's an intelligent, free thinker who is very knowledgeable about music. So I was very surprised to hear him take that stance.
Same, yeah.
Because number one, Toronto absolutely has a sound. Even if you just want to single out Drake and 40 created a sound that has been emulated by a lot of people.
Yeah.
A whole lot of Americans.
A lot of people,
Number two, I'm sure you saw the thread of Canadian producers that all said, if I had $1 for every time I was in LA and somebody came and said, give me that Toronto sound. I was like, so how do we not have a sound when your people are asking for it?
Right. So
what are we talking about?
So here's a question for you. How would you describe the Toronto sound?
I think that Toronto has a few sounds because of the fact that Toronto is so multicultural. They overlap. But like, if we're just to say the Toronto sound that's like the prominent thing that has definitely come from here and nobody can claim that it came from anywhere else, it is the muted bass, slow melodic rap that Drake and 40 created that became something that not only other Toronto artists started to do, but like artists around the world. In the same way that when you hear any artist do anything that sounds kind of mustardy or Dr. Dre-ish, or you know what I mean?
You're like, oh, that's West Coast.
West Coast.
Yeah,
doesn't matter where they're from. If it sounds like, Bay Area, it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like that, because that's where it came from.
Right.
It's not limited and restricted to only those people that can make it, but yes, we understand that's where it came from, right? This is where this came from. And arguably, Drake's best, most classic albums were that. And for people to say, well, no, that's not a thing that doesn't exist is false.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good outlook. I agree with you. When I think of the Toronto sound, it's definitely that that mix of like R&B and rap, and it's like you said, it's like a muted bass sound.
Yeah.
I agree. That's
that
what
wavy,
I think of when
and
it's
like
the
it's
Toronto
been
sound.
described as what Toronto feels like in the wintertime. That's what it's been described as. Nowhere else feels like this.
Yeah. So another discussion in that same clip that came out of post battle, which I think is interesting and good dialogue for us to have as Canadians and as Torontonians, right? But so the first thing that I saw was during the battle, Sean Leone posted something that was interesting.
I didn't see that. What did he post?
He posted something and then it was reposted by Six Buzz. But basically, I'm gonna paraphrase. It was something along the lines of, from the reason that the city isn't running to like defend Drake during the battle is because during 2012 to 2018, Drake never uplifted anybody from the city. So that was kind of like one of the first comments that I remember seeing from someone in the city, because I remember thinking Kendrick has all this support during the battle, right? All these artists have grouped together, 20v1, the whole thing, and Drake really was solo. So I started thinking, I'm sure there's going to be artists that are going to start coming out and voicing their opinion on, supporting Drake. I don't really think a lot of artists did. Even his close, like Yachty, all his close people kind of really just stayed a bit silent. Then I started thinking, okay, well, people from within the city might start coming out and voicing their opinion. Like me and Brandon did. We were like, oh, Drake won, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like waiting for the artists to do it. I didn't really hear a lot of artists doing it. And then the first thing that I saw was that comment from Sean Leone. So I started thinking, this is interesting, because I really haven't seen support from the city, from artists, saying that Drake won. And then I see this comment from Sean Leone. Then on top of that same Ebro clip, Ebro says, I'm also noticing, he's like, can artists stand on their own without Drake? He's like, because this is a great time for the city to unite. You guys should unite and build something. And I started thinking to myself, do you think that Toronto is united the way that we should be as artists, or the way that the West Coast is, or the way Atlanta is? Are we united?
We're not, and we never really have been. That's always been a problem. And I think some of it stems from us really wanting acceptance from America. Because hip hop, everybody knows, is from New York. And New York is very close to Toronto. And historically, in hip hop culture, like if you go back to like the 80s and early 90s, a lot of Canadian hip hop sounded like they were trying to sound like they were from New York, because we didn't yet have an identity. It was very new.
Right.
It wasn't until artists like Cardinal Official, Michi Me, Maestro Fresh West,
the legends,
Shot Claire, Socrates, like these are among a group of artists that started carving out a different sound, or different sounds, plural, that we're not trying to be like anybody else, just trying to be ourselves. You know what I mean? Jellystone. I remember Cardinal talking about seeing Jellystone and Ghetto Concept perform at a community center, and how they were infusing their Jamaican roots into the hip hop. And Cardi was like, yo, we can do that? Because that's who I am.
Right.
I always thought I had to do something else. And then he started being like, okay, well, I'll just be myself. and then look at the legendary career he has.
Right.
And so on and so forth. So I think that we just are like little bro to the States based on population. And for that reason, everything that they do just seems bigger and better. But in time, especially because of the internet, that has shifted. Like, I don't think that Drake could have been Drake without the internet. Because if we were still moving the way that we had to before, with physical copies of things, we just didn't have the resources.
Right.
You know what I mean? It wasn't the same. Like, maybe he still links up with Wayne and maybe it works that way, but like, Drake was one of, if not the first artist that really harnessed the internet in such a way that like, he just took over. Like when Best I Ever Had came out, it hit like a bomb. Like, everybody was on that. You know what I mean? When those mixtapes, when that mixtape came out, So Far Gone, he had mixtape before, but when that came out, the timing of that and being able to distribute on the internet and just everything about that time, he had his blog at the time, like all of those things,
Right.
firing off at the same time, just got it to everybody. And like, the fact is, the product was good. We've always had good product. It's just, how do you distribute? And when the distribution channels changed and became more accessible, that's when things changed for Canadians. And that's when we started to realize, okay, no, we don't actually have to be like anybody else. We can be like ourselves. And things started to form and grow. But mentally, I don't think that everybody is there yet. And so the unity that we see in like an Atlanta or a Los Angeles or like a Memphis, or, you know what I mean, different places, we don't really have that here because it just feels like there's cliques of people trying to get hot on the internet versus clicking up together and moving as a force. I do my best to do this one, but I am aware that there's still a lot of people doing this one.
What do you think Toronto needs to do for us to build that unity? I mean, aside from hating on each other and all that, but I mean, what can we do? Like, what kind of infrastructure is lacking for, maybe it's a lack of infrastructure, which is also stopping people from wanting to support each other here. I don't know. I'm trying to put my finger on it and also think about what can we actually do differently.
Well, on an artist level, I think we just need to decide. On an infrastructure level, absolutely, we have our shortcomings. But I think, again, that's based on just population, which is money. Do you know what I mean? It's like, when you have more people, there's more of a market. When you have less people, there's less of a market. And the infrastructure here in a lot of ways still looks at it as, well, there's not that many people here, so. It's like, but we're not just selling to people here, we're selling to people everywhere because we're on the internet. So like, we build it here, but it's sold to everyone everywhere.
Yeah.
If we can just continue to think globally, that local thing is not going to be an issue anymore. But as far as what it will take for us to properly click up, I think it's just, we need to decide. Like I said, I've decided, and I move with some artists that also move this way. But you're right, it doesn't feel like certain other places where it just seems like a lot of the names that we know are all working together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to be honest, we could be wrong. There could be the same type of thing going on in all these places too. It's just like the key individuals are working together, and so that's what we see. So it makes it feel like a unified force versus segmented groups of people trying to all do a similar thing.
Yeah. I think, we're talking about infrastructure as well, and I think metrics, population numbers, all of that stuff comes into play for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm also wondering if, we've had this conversation before on and off camera where we talk about the Canadian label versus the American label.
Yeah.
And whether it's detrimental or beneficial for a Canadian artist to sign with the Canadian part of the label. What do you think about that?
I would love for it to be advantageous. I would love for it to be a situation where having people on the ground here in the offices that understand the culture here and can move in such a way that, yeah, we are still targeting the world, but like, we're building it from here and we understand it versus somebody else who might not understand us. But it's not. And unfortunately, it's not. And I feel like the main reason for that is a lot of the decision makers are of the music business, but they're not of the music culture. So they understand the numbers and metrics, and they understand how things have worked very well. But things change. And I feel like a lot of people are moving, they're not moving at the speed of culture. They're moving at the speed of business, and they mean well. And I truly like to believe that everybody that works in the music business really genuinely loves music, and they love artists, and they want to break artists, and they want to see people be successful. Like, they want that. You know what I mean? Obviously, the deals are not necessarily structured in such a way that's always very advantageous to artists, but that's everywhere. But I just genuinely believe, and everybody that I know that works at labels, they're excited about music. They're excited to tell you about the new artists that they're excited about. They might not be excited about every artist that gets put on their desk for them to work, but they're definitely excited about some. They're out at shows, they're doing things, they're moving, they're talking, they're communicating, and they're like living music. But the ones that I'm talking about, they're not the final decision makers. You know what I mean? And like, the final decision makers also have to answer to shareholders.
Right.
And then the art goes out the window because now it's just commerce.
Right.
And like, I think that all of that just gets so convoluted. And when you're speaking of smaller markets, like such as Canada, it's like commerce is gonna win over art every time because, well, we have no choice, right? Which is why I'm such an advocate for ownership and for artist independence and for direct to consumer. And like, these are things that will allow us to be artistically free, but also gain financial success in the process.
I hear you, man. I've had this exact conversation with you and with lots of other creatives that I respect, and that's part of why me and you have podcasts right now too, right? Is I could do this for other entities. I could be employed and do this for Complex, for a bunch of other platforms, right? And I enjoy it. But doing it for myself gives me the ability to do it the way I want to do it, right? Not having to, and you know, whenever you work in a corporation, and the labels are a great example because we're talking about this, is in any major corporation, there's red tape. And you could get tied up in red tape. You have a really great idea, but it gets halted because somewhere up top there was red tape, and it's like, oh, we can't do it.
But it takes a lot of signatures to push something through.
A lot, man. And doing our own thing like this, it's like, I want to have you on. I don't have to ask anybody. I know you. I know you're smart. Let's make it happen. And that's what I love about doing this. I think that the Canadian record label system, like you said, I want to see it do well. But unfortunately, I haven't seen an artist that's on the Canadian side of a label really break through. I'm waiting for it. I really want to see one, but do you know of one?
Generally, the ones that do also have partner deals in other territories. Like they'll have a US deal also, or they'll have a UK deal also. And I've seen some success in those ones, but like not just a purely Canadian, not in black music. In rock, yes. You know, in country, yes.
That's a good point.
You know, in pop even, but not in black music. Not in anything hip hop, not in anything dance, not in anything Latin, not anything African, like nothing of this sort. And these are like the biggest genres in the world. But it's just not happening just out of here from the label system. It's happening independently though. But not from the label system. And I would love for it to. I would love for all the artists that come to me for advice that I should be like, yo, you know what? You should really go with this label. You should, you know, I'm a believer in like, you wait for them to call. You don't like beat down their door because you want them to actually want you. But I would love to be able to be like, yo, keep doing your thing. And if they call, that's the deal you need to take because they know how to do this. Like, I would love for that to be a thing, but it doesn't seem to be, or it hasn't. I haven't seen enough evidence myself of that happening. Unfortunately.
The last guest I had on for episode 2 was Cadence Weapon. I just posted that today. But he had a really great comment. He said something like, I love Canada. I want to be in Canada. And he's like, the one thing that I'm not is a ladder puller. He's like, I don't get somewhere. He's like, I like to share. He's like, I get somewhere and I bring people with me. I don't like pull the ladder.
I love that.
And when he said that, I was like, wow, that's a really great analogy, because I think gatekeeping in general is also something where already in a small market, there aren't that many opportunities to get places. And then with gatekeeping, it's like you narrowed those even more.
Yeah, and that doesn't help anybody, man.
And I think with somebody like you, I see you and like you're always working with new artists. You're always trying to give your platform, whether it's with the Raptors or now your podcast or whatever it might be, to artists that are looking to get their music out. What do you think, what do you think we can do to like avoid gatekeeping in Toronto and in the city and in Canada? I feel like how do you move around that?
Again, that's just like, that's people making decisions to be gatekeepers. Unfortunately. Like, I don't know that we can prevent gatekeeping if there are people that want to be gatekeepers.
Right.
I think the best thing we can do is to not be like that.
Yeah.
To share resources, to share knowledge. That's another reason why I started this podcast as well.
Sharing knowledge is big, man.
I want to create a space, or I'm creating a space rather, that artists from here, from other parts of the country, and also artists that come into Toronto that don't fit into the boxes of things that there are outlets for them that they can do their press run and get seen and heard. Like, as an example, an artist comes from Nigeria and is touring Canada. If it's not Burna Boy, what are the outlets that they have access to directly? You know what I mean? Like, if they're not already out of here, then what can they go to, and who can they speak to and get some, get a real conversation with somebody who understands their craft, them as an artist?
Yeah, this is a big dilemma, I think, in Canada in general. So, I've been with Complex Canada for a long time.
Yeah.
Complex was recently bought and sold several times.
Yeah.
Right. So now they're under Network, and I think it's great. I think from what I've been hearing, what Network is planning on doing with Complex is amazing.
Great.
But their focus right now is on Complex US. So Complex Canada at the moment is on hiatus, right? So when you look at that,
and Complex is one of those platforms that is of the culture.
Complex is one of the few platforms,
currently it doesn't exist.
In Canada, it's not operating at the moment.
Right.
Hopefully it comes back soon.
Yeah.
But let's say it's gone for a year.
Right.
Within this next year, where do artists that would have got picked up by Complex or promoted by Complex, where do they go now?
Yeah.
Right. And that also goes to show me, like, people like me and you, we need to build more platforms, whether it's our personal platforms like this, like our podcast, or even just work together to build new platforms. But we just need more platforms. It shouldn't be like one platform went away and now there isn't anything.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. There should be options. And I think that's what's great about the US and the UK, right? Like, you could go and there's like one magazine here, one magazine there. There's a radio station that, there's multiple platforms. And in Toronto...
It's based on population, though.
It is based on population.
When you speak of Los Angeles, New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, like all these places, they have their things in place because they have the population. If you have more people, there's going to be more opportunities. There's going to be more people like you and I doing stuff. There's going to be more corporations that look at the market and be like, oh, there's a market for these things, not just the mainstream. There's market for niche things, right? And they're going to create them. They're going to have them there, and things can move. So you're right. It is important for us, those of us who care to do these kinds of things, to do them. That's part of why I'm doing that. I know this is part of why you're doing it. And there are others. It's not just the two of us sitting on this couch doing it.
Of course.
But not that many others. Like, really, the amount of people in this city doing things like this could probably fit on like maybe 3 of these couches. And that's not enough we have a lot of people here. It's not like we're a small city.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're a small country relatively, but Toronto is a big city. It's a very densely populated city.
Right.
We have enough people to do something great. And there are great things happening. It's just, it feels like there's not a lot, because most of the things that are big and well-funded are not for us. So we make them.
Yeah. I think Toronto is also, it's been growing. It's grown quickly, and it continues to grow quickly, bro. Like the rent and all that stuff. It's crazy
Rent's
right
definitely
now.
growing.
You know, everything is. It's just exponentially getting more expensive and busier. I know, like, even I'm in the West now. I'm you know, in the west end of the city. And when I try to get east, bro, I'm just trying to cross Young and just crossing a few intersections. Sometimes I'm stuck in traffic for like 40 minutes, bro.
Yeah. No, again, I just want to like drive this point home.
Yeah.
Canada is small based on the size of the country in comparison to the population.
Right.
But Toronto is a very big city.
Yeah,
on the global scale, it's a very big city. So it's just like when these corporations are looking at Canada as a market, outside of Toronto, you know, there's Montreal, there's Vancouver, there's Edmonton, Calgary, varying levels of size of cities, but no city is as big as Toronto. In the same way that in America, like New York City is massive.
Yeah, New York, LA, Miami.
Right?
Yeah.
But like outside of that, you know, and then there's Texas, and there's all these other places that like, there are major cities. There's also a lot of landmass with nobody.
Yeah.
But it's just where they're geographically situated, it's just way more habitable.
Yeah.
Like if Canada was a little bit more south, we wouldn't have all this land that nobody wants to live on. And we would have more population. So it's just a matter of geography. But it is what it is. Can't drive the country south. So we just got to work what we got. But like Toronto itself is a big enough city to compete on the global stage. We need to act like it is.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And you know, it's a city that I love. I've had this conversation again with so many people as well, as whether you have to leave Canada, you have to leave Toronto, right?
Yeah.
And even myself, man, I'm finding myself spending more time in LA.
Okay.
So I'm between Toronto and LA. But
how are you finding that in terms of getting you closer to your long-term goals?
I think it's all part of it. But I think what I hope to do differently is to not just leave Toronto. I want to build bridges.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm going to be in LA, it's because I'm going between Toronto and LA, and that's a bridge that I'm building to help artists from here get over there, and vice versa. Help artists that, you know, that are in LA interested in collaborating with artists in Toronto come in. I want to build that bridge.
Well, here's my point to that. Because I've been touring globally for years.
Yeah.
But I've also always lived in Toronto.
Right.
And I always encourage people, anyone, especially artists, but also anybody doing anything, period, in business.
Right.
In life. Travel.
Yep.
Like, see the world, see how people do things in different places, take that knowledge, bring it back. Make connections with people in different places. Build bridges, multiple. You know what I mean? Like this idea that, oh, America has everything and Canada has nothing. It's like the world is bigger than North America.
It's huge, man. Yeah.
We're not even talking about Mexico. Look how big Mexico is. Mexico City is massive.
And it's growing.
It's thriving. But like, this is just this continent. There are others.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things going on in all these places. And it wasn't until I started traveling globally that I started to realize, wow, everything that I know is not everything that there is. Everything that I know is not everything that there is. The world is a very big place, and a lot of people are getting a lot of shit done in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of similarities too, but there's a lot of differences. And these are things that we can learn from, we can grow from, and we can make connections, because what they know as their everyday, they look at us and be like, oh man, what do you guys got going over there?
Yeah.
And we can help them too. We can teach them some things too. And when you do that, everything becomes better. That's why my network is global. And this is part of why I never really feel small being in Canada, because I'm like, well, yeah, I live here and it's a dope city that I live in. I don't live in like, you know, I'm not going to call any names to like shade any cities in the country, but like there are much smaller towns and townships in Canada that I could be living in that would not be the same as living in Toronto. Right. But I live in a massive city. Boom, cool. But the world is bigger than this massive city. And there are lots of people out there that want to be of service, that want to connect, that want to do things with us and can learn from it too. And you start moving like that again, and I can't stress it enough. The internet, bro, it changed everything. I didn't start touring until I started using the internet the way that I did.
I love it. I love that you're such a global person. Even the concept of this show. This show is One Borough.
Yeah.
Right? I'm originally from Scarborough. And I started a project called Scarborough Made. A lot of people were like, I'm not from Scarborough. How do I get involved? And I was like, you know what?
One borough.
One borough. We're all one borough. We're all one. We're all in one hood. We should all be united. That's the concept of this, right?
People are people everywhere, man. We have our similarities and we have our differences, but we're all people.
With all of the traveling that you've done too, because I know you played shows all over. You were on tour last year. Like you've been busy, man. What would you say is outside of Toronto? If you could go live somewhere, where would be the city that you would live?
That is a question. That's like probably the fourth most common question I get asked because of the travel. People see it and they're like, oh man,
of course.
You got firsthand experience. Tell me about it. There's a few places, honestly. There was a minute there where I thought I might move to London, England.
Okay.
London is a vibe. London is such a vibe.
I hear that a lot. I haven't been yet.
Oh, you gotta go.
Okay.
Let's go. I'm down to go anytime.
Let's do it.
London, Singapore, it's fantastic. Where else would I potentially live? Taipei was a place that I was like, you know what, I think I could live here.
Taipei's cool. I've been to Taipei. Taipei's cool, yeah.
It's like, because it's very Asian, but also still very Western.
Yeah.
So like I felt not off balance like I had in like maybe in China or Thailand or other places where it's like, well, nobody speaks English.
Right.
I have to figure everything out every second of the day. That's stressful. But Thailand didn't feel like that. I don't know. There's a few places I like Vienna, Austria is a dope place. Berlin. Like I really truly feel like a global citizen. I think I could pretty much live anywhere.
Okay, best food though. Where's the best food? Where's the best food?
That's a tough one because I'm a foodie. Lebanon.
Oh shoot!
I love me some Middle Eastern food, and I had like one of the best meals of my life in Beirut. And speaking of the Middle East, Dubai also. But the reason why Dubai, it's very much like Toronto in that it's super multicultural. So like whatever you want, there's an authentic version of that, or 10. You know what I mean? So that's a great place. But like, there's no specific Dubai food per se. It's just Middle Eastern food. But like Dubai is like, it's like a different planet. Singapore has really good food too. It's a mix of Indian and Asian, and like it's South and East Asian.
That's
mixed.
fire. Yeah.
Right in the middle. It is. The spices are incredible.
Again, I'm from Scarborough. I love Hakka food, bro. I live for that. That's great,
There's
man.
a lot, man. There's a lot.
What about in terms of music scene? I know obviously it's hard to even say because there's different genres, there's different kinds of clubs, but where would you say from all the places you've traveled to has like a really prominent music scene that you're like, yo, this music scene is banging?
Definitely London. And the reason why I learned after doing some research, because I started DJing over there. Pre-pandemic, I was like a monthly resident at a couple clubs in London. I was always there.
Right.
And I would just, every single time, like I was just here 3 weeks ago. How am I hearing all this new music now? Like, how am I finding out about all these new artists now? It was just so rapid and so good and so flavorful. I found out after doing some digging, especially with the hip hop scene there, it's like, just like everywhere else in the world, they wanted to make it in America because that's where hip hop comes from. Everybody idolizes New York City and the birth of hip hop culture. But for a very long time, until quite recently, Americans were just not fucking with the British accent on rap. Like they just couldn't get with it. And it was very frustrating to a lot of British artists until they just said, you know what? We're not even gonna watch you guys anymore. We're just gonna do our own thing.
Right.
And that was the beginning of it really taking off there. They just started focusing on themselves. It's like a life lesson. Focus on yourself, girl. Focus on yourself, bro. Don't worry about them. They just started focusing on their own vibe, and it flourished because they understand their own vibe, and there's a population there that can sustain it. And then it just started growing globally. And now you see British artists infiltrating the world because the world caught on. And Drake definitely had a hand in that.
I wonder if that's something that even we should do in Toronto. You know, and it's hard because our biggest artist, which is Drake, has infiltrated the US, and the US is synonymous with Drake and that culture as well. But again, this is where I'm like, I'm always looking at what can Toronto do to grow, especially in the music and media and entertainment space. But I think you're right. Looking at the UK, you're right. There was a while where I remember them trying to break through, and then they just banded together and just developed their own scene. Bro.
That's the part. They banded together.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even so much of, okay, well, we just have to like do our Toronto sound and like not put blinders on. It's like, no, we have to work together so that every time somebody catches wind of something, because we're all working individually to build our careers. But if somebody catches wind of one artist, now they check their catalog and there's all these collabs. Who are all these other artists? Oh, he's from Toronto too. Oh, she's from Toronto too. And then you start to know a bunch. That's how I learned England. That's how I learned their music. It's like, you know, D Block Europe, who's that? And then I check them out and I find this song is like featuring Central C, who's that? And then I find him, and then Jay Huss, and then like all these, they all connect because they all work together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somebody's collabing with somebody all the time, and they all pull up to each other's shows, and it just became a scene. And by default, the shit just got hot. That's what we need. We just need to click up. We need to decide to work with each other versus trying to pay for these foreign features because people here are going to be impressed that you have a song with an American artist.
Right.
Like, that's old, man. I get why that was a thing before. I completely get it. But we're past that now.
Okay, let me ask you this. If you could, on that note, keep that in mind. If you could make the ultimate collab for yourself, minus Drake, okay? Minus Drake and The Weeknd. Okay. But you, minus any of the A-listers, okay? Drake, Weeknd, Bieber, Shawn Mendes, minus those guys, okay? Think more, maybe more like up-and-coming artists, right? But you could make the ultimate collab with you and 3 other artists from the city.
Now you're putting me on the spot because I'm like gonna have to name some of my friends. I feel like I'm already doing that, to be honest. Like,
I feel like you are.
In everything that I do, I've collaborated with most of the artists that I want to collaborate with that are from here, and not just Toronto, from here as in Canada. And there's the few others that I haven't yet, that I'm really big fans of. The conversations are already happening. Like, I do this. Like, what it is that we're talking about that I'm saying, yo, I think that this is what we need to do. I'm living that. Like, I do this because I think that it's the smartest, best thing to do. And because I'm genuinely I'm not working with artists just because they're Canadian. I'm working with them because I'm genuinely fans of their music and them as people. Like, I don't work with anybody that I don't like as a person. And I don't do music with anybody whose music I'm not a fan of. So every collab that you've ever seen me do, it's like, I'm in. Like, I'm all in.
I feel you. I like that. I like that. Very diplomatical answer.
No, but I mean, it's real.
I feel you.
It's real. It's like, I've worked with so many artists that would be on this top 3 list. I've already done them. And then people that I haven't worked with, I'm already, you know, in conversation with them, already cool with them, that like, those will also happen.
Okay, well, we're going to do a top 3. Okay? So now we're going to move on to Raptors.
Okay.
Top 3 Raptors
of all time.
Of all time. I already know who your one is.
We already spoken about Vince. Vince Carter is my favorite Raptor.
But is he your top choice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And his jersey is now retired in another team.
Well, I want to get your opinion on that too. But
I mean, well, players can have their jerseys retired in several teams.
But even just from Toronto fans, when I was reading stuff, everyone's like, why would they not allow him to retire his jersey in Toronto first?
No, I mean, they just got to it first. I think that's all that was. Like, they just pulled the trigger first. He only retired like, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
So it's not like, you know what I mean? But he's in the Hall of Fame now. And like, now it's time for the victory lap of, okay, cool. So like, I would be shocked if Vince's jersey is not hanging in the Raptors at some point.
Oh, no, it will be.
I would be shocked if it's not.
I think he's even publicly said a few times he wanted to retire as a Raptor. Did he not?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really hoping, 2020 was a weird year, but I was kind of hoping that we were going to be able to pick him up at the trade deadline just for his leadership and for the symbolic reason of bringing him home. Yeah. This is where it all started for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the city has forgiven him, because for a long time it's not a friendly place for him. But yeah, I would say Vince, Kyle. Third one's tough. Kyle is like undeniable. There's no question. A lot of people, he's their GOAT.
That's my pick.
Yeah, and I don't argue with it. I don't argue it at all. I get it. The third.
Also, Kyle was here forever, bro.
He was.
He. Anyways, this is your top three.
Yeah. I would say between Mighty Mouse.
Oh.
Because of him being like the first.
Yeah.
He's the first Toronto Raptor. He was Rookie of the Year. Like, that was important. Like, impact wise.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know a lot of people would say Kawhi. It's hard for me to say Kawhi because he was only here for the 1 year. He was like a hired gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you calling a hitman. It's like, is he really part of the gang, or is he like, you know what I mean? Is he a ringer that you brought in? If he stayed for 2 years, he'd be on my list, no problem.
Yeah.
I think I'm just salty. If I'm gonna be honest, I think I'm just salty that he bounced.
But could we have got the chip without him?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So it's valid. I think I'm just salty.
Well, hold on. Better question yet. Do you think we only got the chip because of him?
No. I don't think we only got it because of him. I think that he was one piece that helped push us over the top. Along with Marc Gasol was very instrumental in that too.
Yeah.
And Danny Green during the regular season, not so much in the playoffs. But the team was already ramping up. And if DeMar was who he is now, at that time, he could have been that guy, I think. But he wasn't ready yet. He had to go play for a couple years with Pop in San Antonio. Then by the time they got to Chicago, now he was that killer that we needed in Toronto. You know what I mean? DeMar is up there in my he's in the rankings too. DeMar, Bosch, Sotomayor, those guys are all floating around for that third spot.
Yeah. DeMar was. Even when DeMar was here, he was doing good stuff. He just, like you said,
great.
he just wasn't where he could have been. He wasn't at his like prime.
No, DeMar was great.
Yeah.
Like DeMar was great, but when he left San Antonio and by the time he got to Chicago, he was a different guy.
Yeah.
Like he was a different guy. It just felt way more like he's coming to murder you on that court.
Yeah.
Whereas he was like, here he was still, I don't know, maybe there was still like, he was still on his come up. But at that time, he arrived. Like I just felt like he arrived. Chicago Bulls DeMar DeRozan is a different man than Toronto Raptors DeMar DeRozan.
Okay, hold on. So go back. So your three is Carter,
Lowry, and it's close between Damon Stoudemire, Chris Bosh, and DeMar DeRozan.
Bro, that's how many.
It's fine. Start it right up.
I love that. All right, cool, man. Yeah, that's a great starting line. Imagine that lineup, bro.
Dude,
all of them in their prime.
All in their prime. Again, even like our championship team, we had a roster.
Yeah.
We had a roster. When people say, "Oh man, it's only because of Kawhi," it's like, if it was only because of Kawhi, then how come the Clippers didn't win?
That's true. That's a good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was definitely more than just Kawhi.
Yeah.
It was a lot going on.
It's always
already.
a team effort, right?
It was
Obviously.
a lot. No, but we had hitters, bro. When you look at it after the fact, it's like a young Siakam, a young Van Vliet who are coming into their own.
Yeah.
Serge Ibaka, who's no slouch. Marc Gasol, no slouch. You know what I mean? Again, Danny Green through the regular season was draining threes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we had a team.
We had a great team.
Kyle Lowry, prime time.
I think for me, I've told you this because I got a chance to sit down like this with Lowry and talking to him and getting to know him, but also feeling his passion for the city, bro.
Yeah.
Like that, I'm asking him questions and he's like, yeah, because when I'm out in Brampton and then I go to Saga, he's just talking like a.
It's like he's from here.
Like he knows the city in and out.
Oh, he's here for a long time.
He was here for a long time, but just hearing that passion, it makes you, as someone who is a Raptors fan, makes you love Lowry, man.
Yeah.
Like that guy really loved the city.
We all love that guy, man, and he gets so much love when he comes back.
Yeah, he does get love.
It doesn't matter who he's playing for. It doesn't even matter if he's playing or not. All the love.
Yeah.
All the love. That's our guy.
And then Carter, without Vince, the city, that guy changed the city.
Yo, have you seen the documentary, The Carter Effect?
The Carter Effect.
That is some real shit. He changed the way that we felt about ourselves.
Even nightlife, man.
That's what I'm saying. In general, not just basketball, Toronto. he changed the way that we felt about ourselves, because he was the most exciting player in the most exciting sports league in the world at that time. Everybody was looking at Toronto favorably for the first time ever. They're like, yo, what's going on in Toronto? Toronto's lit. And then nightlife just followed suit, and he was a part of that too. Like, everything just started going up from there.
What's your most memorable interaction with any Raptor at any given time that you've had?
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot. First that comes to mind, this is going to be a wild card that you would not expect.
Okay.
We used to do this thing called the NBA 3-on-3 in the summer. It was like a 3-on-3 tournament that would like travel from city to city across the country. And each stop, they would have either a Raptors player or like a coach or a former, an NBA legend or somebody be like the ambassador, the host at each one. Mm-hmm. And Joey Graham was the one at the Calgary stop. And that guy was a fun guy. You say Kawhi's a fun guy, Joey Graham was a fun guy. And I was DJing. I would always book club gigs in all these cities because why not?
Right.
And I was playing at this club in Calgary called Opus that was like this little restaurant that the owners turned into a club at night, just like cleared the tables out. And it was like the wildest party in the city, hands down. It's like you couldn't even get in unless you got there at like 10:05 p.m. It was rammed already. Bottle service not allowed in that province. They let you have bottle service. Everybody's pouring bottle shots.
Oh, wow.
It was just chaos. And Joey came out to that party and had a great time. He had a great time. And he was up in the morning the next day to host the kids and make sure everything was blessed. But that was a good night.
That's a real professional. You know, you go
pro.
out.
Oh yeah.
But you still got to be up early the next day.
And he got it done. He got it done. No, he was a good guy, and his brother too. He had another brother in the league, his twin brother, but he had another brother that would just like roll with him. And those two guys were just like such great guys.
What do you think the future of the Raps? What's your take on what's happening with the team?
I think that we're in a good position if we make the right choices going forward. We have a great core with Scotty, RJ, and Quickly. I think that's the key right there. We just build around them and we'll be blessed.
Yeah. Have you got to spend any time with them and get to know them a little bit?
No, not so much. This season was kind of, they got here like to the latter part of the season, and I don't know, the shit went kind of quick.
What about Grady, man? What are your thoughts on Grady?
You know, I'm still not sure. He's showing signs. What I love about his game is that he seems very unafraid.
Yeah.
I see him come down the court, he'll take the shot every time. He feels very confident. He works hard. He runs hard. It's like I'm still watching to see. I didn't know too much about him prior to him arriving.
Same, yeah.
And also he didn't get all that much playing time throughout the season. In pockets, but not so much. So it's like difficult for me to say. But I like him though.
Have you seen like he's now starting to jump on TikTok? So I'm like, oh, there's maybe something 4Korners in him might do a TikTok.
I haven't seen that. Is he active?
He just did a TikTok with some of the teammates, man. So I'm like, okay, I want to see Korners get up on TikTok with these guys.
Yeah, I thought Scotty would be more active on socials, but he started out and then he just kind of just locked in on the game, which I don't knock at all. I don't knock it.
At the end of the day, you're there to play ball.
I don't knock it. Yeah, absolutely. And he's coming along tremendously. You see how that kid, man?
Bro.
You see that kid? They said we shouldn't have drafted him, and like, look at that. Rookie of the year, and he just keeps going up.
He's really going to be the face of the franchise, man. Like, he's that guy.
One of the faces of the league. I strongly believe it. What Darko said, I believe it. He's going to be one of the faces of the league.
Yeah, 100%.
He's just like a physical specimen that like loves basketball, has a great attitude, and works hard. Like, what more do you want?
I feel you, man. I want to ask you last thing about Toronto. We've talked about Toronto a lot.
Okay.
But in terms of food, what's your food spot?
You know what?
In Toronto.
That is an interesting question for me because I am a foodie and I go to restaurants everywhere, but not so much at home. Like I rather cook at home than go out to eat. Like I have a couple spots that I like pop into or order from, but like I'm more of a home cooked guy when I'm at home. On road, I can tell you my favorite restaurants in most cities.
Favorite kind of cuisine, at least, when you're at home?
Oh, Caribbean. 100%. Because my mom lives here, so there's that. But beyond that, yeah, there's just so many dope spots here. Like, the closest one to where I live right now is Chubby's. And they have the best plantain in the world, in my opinion. I don't know what they fry it in. I don't know what, just a little smidgen of crack or whatever they put in there. It's just like, my mouth is watering just thinking about it right now. I'm probably going to have to get some before the end of the week.
What settle this debate for me, because I feel like when you talk to people about Jamaican beef patties, there's always a debate. It's like, nah, this place Randy's closed down. Now it's Fami, but no. So it's like, where would you say is the best Jamaican beef patty?
Randy's was. Yeah.
Randy's was up there, man.
Yeah, I was. I don't know. I haven't found another one that makes me that excited since then.
Have you tried Fami Bakery?
I have not.
Fami Bakery's up there, bro.
Okay.
They're, I think he's over here at like Davenport and
okay.
And
I give it a shot. I give it a shot. I'm Trini though, so like I'm more of a bacon shark kind of guy still, or like a nice curry chicken roti. Like that's me.
When we started, you also mentioned you had a new partnership with the Hilton.
Yes.
Talk to me about this, man.
Yeah, it's the Canopy by Hilton. The Canopy is the Hilton hotel chain's fancy hotel. It's their boutique vibe. And there's only one in Canada. It's here in Toronto, in Yorkville. And my manager, Omar, and I just like got to be tight with the owners based on me DJing one of their birthday parties.
Nice.
And she loved everything. I mean, she and her brother are already big Raptors fans. And so that's why I got booked for the party. But then we just like hit it off and just kept in touch. And then her and the GM of the hotel were like, yo, we need to do something more with 4Korners. We need to do something more. And just hit us up with the idea of, at first I thought they wanted us to be promoters for events at the hotel, which is not what I do. But when we sat down, they were like, no, we want you to curate the vibe. We want you to create a brand around it that is, works with your brand. And we want to do something cool with this space. We have this beautiful restaurant, but like, it's just a restaurant. We want to do something more than that. And Omar and I sat down and thought about it, and we had already been having conversations about, in Toronto and in North America, really, the culture of going to like a hotel lobby or a lounge doesn't really exist the way that it does on the other side of the world.
Right.
Like, it's the type of thing that like, that's the spot where you start your night. You know what I mean? Or that's where you go if you don't want to just go to a restaurant and sit down with people that you just know and you don't get to talk to anybody. Or you don't want to go to a club and where it's just turn up and like bottle service and everything's crazy. You want something like with a little bit of elements of both. It's like, yo, why don't we create that here? Because we've been talking about how that doesn't exist. They're coming to us with this opportunity. Why don't we do that? So came up with the brand. It's called Flavor. And it's basically a mix of food and vibes. It's like we got dope DJs spinning. I curate that. So I pick the DJs and book them every week. And the restaurant's open so you can get a full meal, you can get bites. They got sick cocktails. But it's like just a vibe that's like, and it's earlier too. Starts at 6:30. Ends at around 10:30, 11, sometimes a little bit later. But like it's just become this thing that people love. And I knew they would love it because I love it. This is what I want to do on a Saturday. I want to go out and like chill, meet some people, see some girls, whatever.
Right.
Have a couple drinks, have some food maybe. The vibe, you can get up and dance if you want to. But then from there you can be like, all right, well, I'm good. I'm going to go home. Or, all right, where are we going next? It's just like, you got to come by, bro. You're going to love
I'm
it.
100% going to come by. Also, congrats on that, man.
Thank you.
I also love when, there's brands that are willing to do something new with a creative. And I think that's what we were just talking about. How do we build infrastructure? And sometimes it's a lot of finding private funding to do something cool. Using someone else's money to do something for the culture, right?
Bro, it's just really like hiring the right people to do things. Hiring experts.
That's it, man.
You know what I mean? In every facet of life and business, I think that you get experts involved, this shit's gonna be dope. That's just that simple. If I'm, doing a podcast, I get, I need people who understand video and lighting and all that. I'm not gonna just wing it myself. So like me starting my pod, I enlisted some people to be like, yo, help me learn what it is that I need to learn. Help me put this together.
Of course.
You know what I mean? The Hilton, they're like, yo, we have this dope space, but we want dope vibes. you're a dope vibe maker. Come through and make some dope vibes here. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. So we launched on my birthday weekend, and we're going strong ever since, man. It's such a vibe.
Bro, congrats, man. Thank you for coming through the crib. I'm going to definitely come to your party.
Yes.
And if you need help with your pod, bro, I'm here. Holla at me, man.
Yo, you know what? I live down the street. We can go there right now.
We'll do it, brother.
Appreciate you,
My
brother.
guy, thank you so much for coming through, brother.
Big love, big love.